This is just out of curiosity, but remember all those horrible drawings you drew as a kid? What if I told you that one day your worst drawing ever actually jumped off the page and screamed in your face? You would call me insane, right? But here's 11 stories gathered from across the internet about stick people, like the ones a child draws, and how they walk about in our dimension. Are they extraterrestrial beings from another plane? Or maybe a ghost taking some unique form, who knows? Grab a blanket, turn off your lights. Here's 11 disturbing stick people stories. The Stickman who jaywalked. It was this year in 2015 when I had the experience of seeing a black stick figure. It was Easter, April 5th, and my husband and I were driving north on a highway to our daughter's house at 9:30 in the morning. It was pouring rain, unusual in Northern California since we've had many drought conditions. All of a sudden, I saw dimly through the rain-battered windshield a thin, black figure about 12 feet tall, sprinting across the roadway from left to right, from east to west, several car lengths in front of us, seeming to dodge the cars, yet lifting up off the road. It disappeared down an embankment, and I didn't see it after that. Very strange. My husband did not see it since he was concentrating on driving. Now, this was in broad daylight, not in the dark shadows down a lonesome road. Therefore, it didn't strike me as spooky. The impression I had was that this was a reflection or embodiment of nature and energy. As it moved quickly, it seemed to have some purpose or destination, or just an intent of getting out of the way of traffic. The Stickman who walked like a dog. My senior year of high school, I went for a run at around 5 a.m. Of course, everything was dark, and there wasn't much people up at that time. As I was running past my old elementary school, I saw this black figure walking on the street across from me. It was this tall creature, moved kinda slow, lanky, but it also looked as if it had horns on its head, and it was walking on all fours. So it wasn't really a black stickman, but it was similar to one. I slowed down to a stop and just stared at it. It was just walking until I saw it stop, and its head slowly turned towards me, like it was contemplating on coming to me. I got scared and just sprinted away. I've never seen it since. Even to this day, I have no idea what it was. I've mentioned it to other people, and nobody else has ever encountered something like it before. The dramatic stickman. Hello, I thought I would just share my experience with the black stickman. I was around the age of 19 and I lived with my grandmother. I had a makeshift room in the basement with a lace curtain as my door. I woke up one night and looked towards my door, and as I do this, I see a stick figure. The stick figure was tiptoeing across my doorway. It was very black and very thin, but the oddest thing was, it looked like he was being very dramatic about it, lifting his legs very high while staying on his tiptoes. I wasn't frightened, and I didn't think it meant harm. I am now 38 and have told people my story a few times, but haven't thought much of it till I stumbled across this article. It actually blew my mind to know that I'm not crazy and that other people have experienced the same thing, which is quite comforting. I just hope my story can provide the same comfort to someone else. Stickman by the shower. I saw something in my younger childhood similar to this. This is the only thing that comes close to a legitimate description. I was about 10 or 11 at the time. I'm now 30 years old, and not a day goes by where it doesn't cross my mind. I lived in the mountains throughout my childhood until I was a teenager. The encounter happened while I was getting out of the shower. I heard some shuffling coming outside the window, but we had a holographic plastic and adhesive covering over the window, so I wasn't able to see anything. Once I peeled the plastic from the window a little bit, I could see a long, black, slender creature laying down next to the swing set. The weird thing was that I wasn't really scared, more in shock than anything, so I called my sister into the bathroom to come see it, but it was already gone. Little did we know it was going to make another appearance. The next day in the late evening, we invited a friend to come stay the night with us, and we were all sitting in front of the massive window with no curtains in our living room on the couch. We were just hanging out talking when my sister suddenly brought to her attention an extremely tall, I would say 9 to 10 feet, dark, skinny figure with gold glowing eyes watching us from a couple 100 feet from the window outside. We freaked out and bolted to the bedroom, where we looked out the window again to see if it had disappeared exactly as it did the night before. I don't know what we saw, why, or how we saw it. Don't know what it wanted either. For the longest time, I thought it was an alien or something, but by the description from everyone here, this sounds the closest. I've told a couple people about it, but they act like I'm crazy. Good to know I'm not alone. The Curious Travelers. When I was about 6 or 7 years of age, in 1969, I had my nan come over to visit us from England to Australia. I was sleeping in the spare room with my nan, on the opposite side of the room. It was dark. It was nighttime. Opposite me, there was a single window. A very old and heavy window that worked on a heavy cord to lift it. And then 2 stick figures, I would say men, lifted the window from the outside and crept into the bedroom, making no sound at all. I mean, they lifted the window, but there was no sound. Well, I was terrified. I could see that these figures were not human, but resembled 2 very tall stick figure men. They stood there for a few seconds and seemed to be talking to each other, although they made no sound. My nan was fast asleep and she was snoring loudly. I called out to her, "Nan, Nan," but she kept snoring. Then the 2 stickmen walked over to her slowly and peered over her, looking at her and talking to each other but making no sound. I was so frightened, couldn't move, and I was praying that they would not see me or hurt me. I was staring at them, and then they walked past my nan and then walked past me, then opened that window again without making any noise and slowly climbed out the window one at a time and closed the window on the way out. I would describe them as being very tall, between 6 and 7 feet tall. They were black, blacker than the room and the night, as there was no light. They also both had black hats on, like a rounded shape. They had no faces, they made no noise. They moved slowly and strangely. Till this day, no one has believed me, but now that I've found this site, I will show it to everyone. I did not feel that they were evil or trying to hurt someone. More just like curious travelers that decided to climb into that room at night and have a look around. This is the truth, and I can remember the experience as if it were yesterday. The Crawling Man. I think my brother might have had a similar experience to this. I was at our father's apartment, so I can't confirm anything, But my brother and I tend to be serious with each other when it comes to supernatural things. He encountered now what I believe to be a stickman on August 22nd, 2015. He went home from our dad's apartment early to work on a school project. He told me that between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m., he had heard something outside our left window. He went to investigate but couldn't get the best look because we have a slab of wall material in front of that window, so he had to look through a crack between the window and slab. From what he could see, he described a tall black figure crawling up the side of our house onto our roof. The only thing about his story inconsistent with other stickmen sightings is that the creature made scratching noises on our roof until it left at 5 a.m. According to him. The shriek. I am so excited to have finally discovered this site. Although I was initially searching for a different subject, I stumbled upon the Stickman article and wanted to share a story because I wonder if this has happened to others. I suffer from sleep paralysis, and when I was younger, about 8 or 9, I would sometimes have a hard time determining whether I was really seeing something or if I was actually dreaming. When I first started, I had a dream about such figures. I saw them standing in my room when the lights of a passing car shone through my window. I couldn't move and I could barely muster a moan because the pressure in the air was so thick. One turned towards me, but there was no face, although I heard it shriek. I don't recall it looking as though it was made of wood texture-wise, but I would say it resembled slightly blurry black branches. It would make sense to be wood as we lived off the highway with a thick forest behind our house. They disappeared with the passing of the cars, although I'm not really sure how they left. I've always thought this dream was odd as I usually would have these dreams about normal things I already thought existed that terrified me. Having read this, I wonder if these creatures were not a dream but actually something that I saw. A gang of stickmen in my room. I was about 5 or so. You ever open your eyes after you've been asleep and the room is so dark that it's oppressive? And not dark at all? Well, that's when I saw the stickmen, or that's the only way I can describe them, and it scared me up big time. They were not black, as I wouldn't have been able to see. They were 2-dimensional. I recall seeing 4 or 6 in the room, but it wasn't like I was looking in the room. My room was never that dark. Hovering they were, not touching the ground, glowing but not bright, like a very dark red. Maybe it was just my mind adding visions and death where none existed, or some kind of manifestation of illness. I think that the reason I was scared was because as a 5-year-old little tough guy, I knew that this was not a natural thing. This did not fit into my understanding of the world. I got out of bed, shut my eyes as I could not see, and blindly ran for the door with this awful sick feeling in my stomach. Of course, I had to have the door ajar with the light on after that. Even now, nearly 40 years later, I can still remember it very vividly, and I have no appetite to ever see anything like that again. The screaming men. My little sister keeps waking up screaming and pointing to nothing. She describes them as lanky black stick figures that scream in agony as if they were dying or dead. I believe her as I've heard the screams as well, but not having been able to see them for myself. She says that after they scream for about 12 seconds, they speak normally in a deep voice. Most recently, she says that one of them asked her to
end the pain and bring me its life.
It's odd because nobody believes her or say that it's just a dream. We found a hypnotist who's looked into her mind and saw them as well. He told us that it wasn't a dream and that she had seen them for real. Our family sees things like this quite often. My brother spotted a horse-headed man. I have seen and communicated with multiple ghosts, thinking they were real people. I talked to them later to learn that they were either dead or just not there. Doesn't mean anything to be able to see these things. Stickman at my door. I have encountered this entity when I was a kid. The incident took place when I was about the age of 8 or 9. I am 28 now. It was a nice and sunny afternoon and I was at home with my mom. She was in the living room watching TV and I was in my study room playing games on my PC. I thought I should call my friend from school and tell him to come over so that we can play some two-player games together. He was living just on the next street and said he'll be coming over shortly. I resumed playing the games, and after a while I noticed that he was later than usual, but I didn't worry too much about it at the moment. After a while I heard the apartment door being opened and then closed. I thought that should be my friend, and so I got to the door to check. I looked through the door hole and still can't explain what I saw in front of our neighbor's door. I know this is going to sound very weird, but there was a stick figure man standing there in the apartment's hallway. Very human-like in general features, except it looked like it was made of very large matchsticks. The color and texture were also the same with the matchstick. There were pitch black big spheres where the hands and the head were supposed to be. Those looked like the tip of a matchstick as well. The figure was wearing a hat which I believe was yellowish, but I can't really remember the exact color. I remember seeing the joints were like you would expect to see in a person, and for a very brief moment I saw it moving its arms to a different position. Another weird thing was that the apartment's lights were switched on, which at that time there were no motion sensors that turned the lights on, so someone must have switched them. By that time I was more than freaked out and rushed to the living room shouting that there was something in front of our neighbor's door. We opened the door and checked the apartment, but there was nothing there, and my mom said that I might have imagined things or just got blurry vision while looking through the lens in the door hole. I don't have further memory of that particular day, and I don't even remember whether my friend eventually came or not, which is weird in my opinion. So that's about it. This just happened. I am on this webpage because I just had this experience not more than 45 minutes ago. And I came here while researching black figure sightings at the urging of my dad and brother. I live in a small town in northern Minnesota, and I was just out walking my dog Wilson at about 9:15 p.m. Our normal walking route is right on the edge of town, and we normally walk over Long's Bridge over the river, then turn around and head back towards home. To get to the bridge, we take a right turn at a T intersection with rural mailboxes on the far side of the road, and some streetlights behind us. Anyways, as we were approaching the intersection, a tall figure walked very quickly across the intersection that appeared to be dressed entirely in black, and wearing what looked in silhouette like a cowboy-type duster coat. With the streetlights behind me, I should have been able to make out some detail on the person's face, but it was like he was in silhouette and there was absolutely no detail at all. I'm saying he because the figure seemed to be male, seemed to have an easy stride, but was moving unnaturally quickly as he made his way towards the bridge. At this point, Wilson seemed to take no notice of the figure at all until we crossed the street to the mailboxes, where he stops to pee. Suddenly, Wilson started to get very agitated and clingy, and as I looked up, the figure had reached the bridge and it seemed to turn and look at us. But I can't be entirely sure. I was only aware at how incredibly fast the figure had actually reached the bridge, and that it had stopped on the bridge. The figure was dimly lit from the house lights and few streetlights on the far side of the river. I was also now keenly aware that it was aware of us, and furthermore that it made absolutely no sound. As we approached the intersection, we were perhaps no more than 30 feet away from the figure at the closest point. Being that it is a relatively quiet night, when an unseasonably late, light snow flurries falling, and that this is a quiet area, I should have heard footsteps, or at least on the wet pavement. I would also mention that until the figure reached the bridge, it never turned to look in our direction. In rural Minnesota, people greet or at least acknowledge each other on the street when they encounter each other walking. At this point, I was telling myself that this was just all my imagination, yet as I am trying to walk across the bridge and the figure now standing still in the middle of it, all I had were alarm bells going off in my head. Now, I have to mention that I am a college instructor and I teach defensive tactics, fighting techniques to criminal justice students, and I've been training in martial arts for the past 36 years. I don't consider myself a coward or overly suspicious. However, my training has taught me that if something feels wrong, it is. So, trusting my alarm bells, I heeled Wilson and turned 180 degrees and started walking the other direction. I swear I could feel the weight of this figure stare on my back as we walked away. It was so intense that I couldn't help but look over my shoulder 7 or 8 times, making sure that this fast-moving figure wasn't moving up behind us quickly and quietly. However, it did not follow us, and the last couple of times I looked over my shoulder, I could no longer make out anything on the bridge at all. I have to admit that I am still a bit uneasy about the situation, and I'm not really certain about what I just saw and encountered, but I do not like it. I thought I'd share this experience after reading a few of the others above.